Hope you're having fun with the Yarra Valley Garden Party. And what is it about the smell of freshly baked bread, which I can smell right now? It's one of those things that no matter how many times you smell it, you can smell it every morning of your life and it will still bring you joy and happiness. Now, I know a lot of people in lockdown have been doing things like this, baking bread at home. I've been trying, particularly with sourdough, which I know is so huge at the moment. But how hard is it? Well, I've got no idea, but someone here at Stones of the Yarra Valley, Andy, one of the great bakers of the area, will be able to tell us. Now, normally, of course, you'd be able to be here with me on this beautiful spring day, but not today. But soon, hopefully, we'll all be here together up in the valley having a wonderful glass of wine and a meal and enjoying the view. Meantime, though, let's get our own little insight into sourdough. Walk this way. Is one of the bakers here at Stones of the Yarra Valley. Andy, hello.
Hello, how are you?
We're going to be talking sourdough. We're going to be making sourdough. There's a mystique to sourdough, isn't there? It's like, as I was saying before, I don't think I grew up with sourdough. I think when I went to the shops...
No, it kind of left a lot of homes. It is actually one of the most ancient ways of making bread.
Really?
So it comes from a very, very long lineage of the fermentation process being in our natural everyday cooking.
Because it has what we refer to as the mother, and we should all respect our mothers.
Yes, obviously, respect your mothers.
Respect your mothers, and you respect your mother more than most people because...
Yes, well, because
it's your bread and butter.
That's it. So this is our mother. So what it actually is a fungi, bacteria, which is lactobacilli, the bacteria, and yeast as the fungi.
Just say that again slowly.
Lactobacilli.
Okay. So it's a living thing.
Living,
culture.
Breathing. We call it our baby. This thing, it pretty much, if you make a mistake with the bread, it's okay. If this thing survives,
okay.
That's all you need.
Mothers need to be very forgiving.
That's it.
So this is really millions and billions of tiny little bacteria all doing what they do.
All eating and all growing. It's a society, so we kind of treat it that way. So we build this up. What it eats is sugars inside the actual flour. Water helps it to grow. Water actually creates the gluten inside the flour. The yeast and the lactobacilli actually eats the sugars, and then that creates the lactic acid, which is our sourness in the sourdough, and the carbon dioxide, which is the bubble in the leaving.
Did I just see a bubble?
Yep, it's living, it breathes.
Here, go on, get right in there, have a look at that. That is our rather...
So you should get an intense sour smell.
It's a really sour...
It's almost alcoholic.
It is a bit.
Yes.
It's quite earthy as well, isn't it? You really feel the kind of ground and the...
Well, if you think of yeast in beer, then you can understand where the alcohol comes from. So the yeast actually produces alcohol and carbon dioxide in the process of the fermentation and eating the sugars.
And how do you make a mother?
So water, flour, and thyme. That's it. Not thyme the herb.
Okay.
So all we do is we mix equal parts of water and flour together, and then leave it in a warm environment overnight. You can leave it in your fridge for 3 days if you're not making bread that often, and it will grow.
Okay. Well, look, let's get started.
Yes.
Or show me at least some of the processes, because again, as I was saying before, so many people in COVID are at home doing things they've never done before, and apparently bread making has gone through the roof.
It has.
Not just in the machines that you leave overnight.
No, definitely not. The hand making process, the actual natural way of making bread. It is very intimidating for people, just like anything, but all it requires is confidence. There is no true way of making bread.
Really?
No.
I like that.
It is definitely...
it's a bespoke process.
Yeah, and it's definitely, every bread is different to wherever you make it. So if someone's telling you that this is completely wrong, question it, do your research. And it's really not that hard to find out anything you need to know online these days. So starting off,
would the breads be made, just on that, would the breads be made here, the breads that you make here at Stones have a uniqueness to breads made 10 kilometres away?
Definitely.
Okay.
Our bread is our bread. It's down to the water that we use from our taps. It's down to the flour that we get, to the environment that we're in, and how we actually ferment things overnight.
Wow, okay. Beautiful. All right. Okay.
So here we have some actual mixed dough. It's a little bit stringy and very sticky.
It is, isn't it? It's got a kind of a viscosity to it, but it's, It
does. So all we're doing when we actually want to fold the dough and stretch the dough is stretch those gluten strands to make them strong. The gluten strands are what...
It doesn't break them?
Well, if you overknead it, yes. Overkneading is actually very hard to do because the visual from here to the product that you need is very distinct. So you'll be able to see it straight away. The key is working quickly. As you can see, it's quite sticky. The more you stretch the gluten, the stronger it will get.
You're tying it in knots like that. Look at that.
So what we're doing is actually folding it and stretching it. So as we're stretching it, those gluten strands are stretching and getting stronger and stronger. The gluten is actually what holds the bubbles inside, all that carbon dioxide, which makes the bread nice and fluffy and rise with all the little bubbles.
And I presume the gluten has to be completely evenly mixed throughout the bread. If you get patches where it's not mixed, you'll
have a dense spot.
Okay.
Exactly. So, but stretching it...
You're tying it into a bow.
Yep, just knots and knots.
I'm supposed to get in. I was going to get in with like the ball of your of your palm and sort of push it away from you.
So with certain kind of doughs, yes. With what we do, we don't want to be pushing too much because as you're going against the bench, you're actually scraping those gluten strands on the bottom and stretching them a bit too far and breaking them. Okay. So folding them over, letting them relax for a little bit, and then keep on going.
Wow. There's such a beautiful artistry watching you do that with your hands. It's so
practice.
Practice, yes, that's what it is, isn't it? I wouldn't really know. I've never had the patience.
So as you can see, as I'm stretching it, pulling it out, I'm trying not to break anything and then bringing it back into the ball and letting it relax. So it's a lot of play.
I like how you really treat it as a living thing.
Yeah. So the person who taught me that it is a living thing, treat it with respect, kindness, love, everything. You talk to a passionate Italian chef and they'll tell you, can you see the passion in the dish? Yes. Can you smell it? Can you taste it? And that's it. All the love you put into your bread is all the love you'll get out of it in the end.
All the love you put into the bread is all the love you'll get out of it. That should be written up there, inside, or maybe on the ceiling or wherever. That's beautiful. Now, where did you first become a baker, Andy?
Become a chef. So actually, I started off being a savoury chef.
Okay.
Being a savoury chef, I started off actually in a pub in Melbourne Central, the Melbourne Central Line Hotel.
Really?
I moved on through...
You've done a lot of Palmers.
A lot of Palmers, but it was a great learning experience. Starting off in a pub actually taught me how to do things right from the start. I was lucky enough to have a chef who respected not buying things in packets. Everything was made by hand. Right. Even though it was a pub, what we did was very good. So I started off there, then went into the city. I've worked in big places, a steakhouse called Meat and Wine Co. Lovely place, big powerhouse. And there are other people who they treat everything with respect. Their meats are beautiful and there's a good reason behind it. It's because the chefs treat things with respect. Later on, I've travelled to England. I've cooked up in Sheffield. I've also cooked a little bit in Canada. And when I came back, I kind of dipped into the fine dining scene, working for Michael Bakash in South Yarra. Bakash, great seafood restaurant. My love of pastry kind of started with Franco, the pastry chef, when he was there. And he was
Why do you laugh?
He was a very intense...
What do we need to know about Franco?
Very intense person, but an amazing chef. Like everything he did was spot on and perfect. And down to the respect that he gave not only the ingredients, but the people that he taught and the process for actually making what he did.
Great.
And then furthering my pastry and baking experience, I worked under Philippa Sibley at Syracuse. Philippa is a well-known chef in Melbourne who goes back to the 80s and an absolute powerhouse of a chef. She used to run Est.
This is the top drawer of Melbourne restaurateurs we're talking here too.
Yes.
So it just shows the pulling power of the Yarra Valley, in that someone of your calibre, my fine friend,
Thank you.
are out here giving the love that you were taught amongst by some of the finest chefs in Melbourne.
By people who respected and loved what they did. And they showed that through their training. All those people showed exacting recipes, exacting the way that they treat everything that they do. It was lovely. It was great to work under them.
Do you feel sorry for, kids that do, go through an apprenticeship at a big commercial place and all they end up really doing is mixing bags of flour into big vats with a machine that goes around? It's
Definitely. You lose some of the touch.
Yeah, you would, wouldn't you?
But you have to start in a place that shows you how to work with food. So some of those places are
work
good.
with people, I suppose.
Yeah, exactly. It all starts at that. And then as you progress as a career, so I never stayed in a restaurant for more than a year and a half as I was going through training.
You've been sacked from every...
I generally thought that my training experience should be expanded and that learning versatility was the key to my cooking ability.
Oh, cool.
So not only did I do savoury for most of my career, in the past 3 years I've been doing pastry.
People talk about the hours, the social hours of being a bread maker. They're not really social at all, are they?
No, 5 a.m.
5 a.m.
Yeah.
I used to work on commercial radio doing the breakfast shift, and it's like...
So you know exactly what I'm talking about.
But the responsibility of making good bread is far weightier than the responsibility of talking to 200,000 people at 6 in the morning. I can tell you, they'd forgive me, but they won't forgive you.
Yeah, exactly. Well, so we actually serve this bread in our weddings. We serve it for our providor for sale. We serve it throughout all the restaurants that we have under the stones of the Yarra Valley.
Oh.
So this dough has been folded a few times. You can actually see the shine that you get onto it.
I love that smell. I can't describe the smell, actually.
Yeah. So now we're going to give it a fold. So once over.
Getting this?
Once over. Once over. So getting all the four corners. And then that's our last fold of the dough. So from here, what we're going to do is cut, weigh, and shape.
Okay.
So just a light sprinkling. The more flour you use, the drier your bread's going to be in the end. So that moisture that you keep inside the bread will help it rise. We'll keep it nice and soft.
What can you tell me about the flour you're using, Andy?
So we use, in this our white sourdough, we use 3 different types of flour. We use a Wallaby, which is the Lucky brand of flour, and it's a very strong baker's flour. Then we use a wholemeal flour and a spelt flour. So spelt is a very nutty, it's actually one of the most ancient grains that we use. It brings like a real nutty kind of sweet flavour to the bread. The wholemeal that we use actually has a lot of sugars, a lot of biodiversity. And what that does is it helps the yeast and the lactobacilli eat and then grow. So it brings like a big extra punch of flavour. You can just use white flour if that's all you've got at home. But if you're looking for something to give your flour that extra oomph of flavour, go for a wholemeal or a spelt. One thing you need to know about when working with spelt, it doesn't have a lot of gluten in it, so you will have to mould it with a bit of flour just so you get a bit more rigidity in your dough. Okay. Same thing as if you're using a rye flour. So from here, you're just going to do our last fold, get a bit of flour over the top. So we have a nice side and an ugly side. Ugly side's underneath, nice side's on top.
That's mean. Don't give the bread a complex.
Right.
What are you looking for?
So we're looking for 700 grams. There we go. Hang on.
Hang on. Can you put that back? Can we get... How did you...
practice as I say.
That is 700 grams. So it would take me 4 or 5 goes to do that. And I'd still muck it up. That's very impressive.
Well, you say that and then watch this one. 620, yeah, see? Yeah, magic's gone.
The magic's gone. 685.
Yeah.
700 again, pretty good.
There we go. So we're just looking, honestly, within a 20 gram tolerance.
How long can a mother last?
Indefinitely, as long as you feed it and you don't let it die.
Uh-huh.
So,
and not letting it die presumably not too cold.
Yeah, not too cold and not too warm. What happens after a while, if you leave it to eat itself, it eats all the sugars. When it's finishing eating the sugars, they start eating themselves. When they start eating themselves is when it starts to turn bad. So you've got to be very careful about that.
Yes, it's like Australian political parties.
Yeah, exactly.
When they start turning on themselves, it all goes south very quickly.
Okay, so now that we've weighed it, what we're going to do is the first prove. So
the first
prove.
The first
So
prove.
you're just letting it rise up a little bit before we're going to knock all the big bubbles back out and then shape the dough.
Is that nothing worse than buying a loaf of bread and finding there's a huge bubble
in it
and you feel I've been ripped off.
And that's usually just because someone hasn't given it the respect that it needs.
Okay.
Unfortunately. So now what I'm doing is just folding it underneath and stretching the strands on the top a little bit further than everything on the inside.
Wow.
There we go. That's all we need. A nice little circle. You want to try and get the circle nice and even. That just ensures that when it's rising, it rises evenly.
Uh-huh.
So I like to do a little fold on every side. Get your 4 sides.
Yep.
Roll it over.
You'd be a wonderful masseur.
Oh, you say that, but... Now, if your hands are a little bit sticky, just use the flour on the bench. Like I said, adding extra flour isn't really good for the dough.
Yes, I've often wondered that.
Yeah.
I've made pasta, homemade pasta, and I think I often use more dough actually keeping the strands come out of the machine than what goes into the actual pasta.
So now this will sit for 20 minutes, just giving a rise, and then we'll be able to beat it down and fold it into a loaf.
All right, excellent.
Let's chuck that up there. Okay. Now, any extra dough you can actually use to put back into your dough for the next day. So you can actually use this dough as your mother, as your starter.
Okay.
We use a separate kind of process, so our mother gets taken out before we actually add it into the bread. So we have a better control of how the bacteria grows.
Do you use one mother at a time, or do you have several going?
No, we use one, which is dangerous, yes, but it's the bakers here know that the mother is God. So
Good to know. Is there mother insurance?
There is. So what we actually do is we dehydrate a little bit and keep it frozen.
Okay.
So that, if we need to take it out, we've still got the same colony. It doesn't last forever. It lasts about a month in the freezer, but we do that as a process just in case. So we've still got our original colony. We just have to bring it back to life by adding more flour, more water, and letting it ferment and getting that colony back up to the right strength.
Okay, all right, good. Well, I tell you what, while we're waiting for this process, which is called
The rise.
the rise, we might go and have a look at the Providore shop.
Certainly. Enjoy. See you guys later.
Andy, nothing says that bespoke sourdough loaf than the shape of it. How do you get that?
So we can go for 2 different kinds. So if you want just a normal shape, a normal round, for a round dough, get a bowl and a hairnet. Best way to do it. So it's what we actually use here. So what you want to do first is get a little bit of flour, tap off as much as possible, and then we're going to pat it down a bit. What this is doing is breaking up the large bubbles that are in the bread. Like you said earlier, it's a bit of a shame when you get a nice big bubble right in the middle of the loaf. So that's all we're doing now. You don't want to beat it up. You just want to tap out those big bubbles. Then all we're going to do is fold, Stretch again. Get a nice little ball. And you want the beautiful side on the bottom. So it's just going to sit in there like that. Bit of semolina over the bottom. Semolina stops it from sticking onto the tray right at the end of the bake. There you go. The other way we're going to try is actually the loaf style.
Is this the more oval shape?
Yes. So once you get your bread floured, we're going to do what's called making your bed. So
Making your bed.
Making your bed.
Something I never did.
So that's setting up the loaf to be on our tray. So a bit of semolina on the bottom. Be generous with the loaf style. Now we're just going to pat it down again. Getting all those massive bubbles out. If you see any on the side, just pop them with your fingers. Stretching the bread out, getting it nice and even. You're going to create a little A-frame or triangle. Getting any of that air that's trapped out.
Yeah, it's a triangle.
Yeah, so spreading the base.
An isosceles triangle.
Putting your hand on the bottom and giving that gluten a bit of a stretch out, elongating it.
Okay.
Then we're going to fold it over. So a little bit more of an advanced technique, but with time.
Oh, look at that. And there it is, emerging in front of our eyes. I can see it happening now.
So now what we want to do is seal the seam. So get it on the seam edge and then just drag your fingers over a little bit and tuck it on. All the gluten in there is quite sticky, so it'll stick the flour together. Pinch the sides. Give it a nice little roll. A roll in the semolina. Then your bed's made and you're off to sleep.
Cool, beautiful. How do you get those slits in them? Do you make a cut to make that characteristic?
So what we use is called a lame. So pretty much it's just a razor blade. So when we want to cut the bread, what we'll do with confidence and with speed is go along, hold it here, and then drag all the way across just before you're about to bake. Okay. What that does is there's a lot of pressure and bubbles inside the bread as it's growing in the oven. And if you don't make that cut, the bread will blow up in an unpredictable way. So that cut actually stretches it out, leaves room for it to grow and actually gain size instead of blowing out in various ways.
Ben, what a beautiful place.
Thank you.
What do you call this?
This is the Providor at Meletos.
The Providor at Meletos.
Yeah. This is our engine room for all things creative. When we have weddings on, it runs all of our floristry, all of our design. It's run by my brother, Ryan Fraser, who took this on 4 years ago.
How do you begin to curate something like this? It's sort of this beautiful, eclectic, I hate that word, but...
I know what you mean. It's the beauty of Ruth and Vonnie Fraser, my mum, work very closely. They have a lot of fun sourcing from all around the world. And yeah, we've got a lot of designers that we work with who often come back to us with new ideas, and it's a very organic, familiar approach.
All around the world, do you give some love to the local area?
Absolutely, absolutely. One of our main focuses is, of course, supporting the Yarra Valley. So we've got the Soap Shed, who is Gilly Johnson's, just in Kangaroo Ground. A lot of local producers in terms of olive oils, your salsas, your chutneys. What else have we got? All the flowers that we purchase from a local. Yeah.
And normally, of course, on a beautiful spring day like this would be thumping.
Yeah,
it's been a really difficult year.
Yeah, this time last year it was a bit different. But we're staying positive. I mean, there's only so much we can do, but we've been incredibly busy. Our staff are still very much engaged, which has meant the world to us as a family. that they care, that they're coming back, that I know it's part of their job keeper, but beyond that, that they're calling us, that they're engaged. And I think that means so much to us, and it just gives us the confidence to move forward post-COVID, whenever that is.
Whatever that is, but there will be a post-COVID, and one day, hopefully soon, this will have visitors back in some form.
Yeah, of course.
The notion of actually staying confident or staying positive is so important in this. I know your dad is a really positive guy.
He's he has been the force throughout all of this. That every day he gets up and every day you're kicked again, and he just gets his smile on and he just gets back to work. And I think that has been one of the things. Mum and I, we tend to lean a bit more for the gin earlier on. But he's been a lot more, no, we've got work to do. We need to pull the boots up and really get cracking. So put us in good stead for hopefully reopening soon.
Now you grow a lot of your own produce here?
Not specifically, actually. The Napoleon family grow all the apples and they manage the vineyards around us.
Okay.
So we have a lot of fun making jams and things, but no, the majority of our vegetables, etc., are brought in.
Okay. Well, there's some lovely gardens you want to show me, so let's go and have a look at them.
Beautiful.
You lead the way, sir. On the way to the vegetable garden, but I can't help noticing the courtyard, because when people start to come back, Ben, it's going to look something like this, isn't it?
Of course.
And you've got the space for it.
Yeah. So we moved very quickly with creating our own, essentially COVID normal. We knew that the restaurants were going to be pushed outside.
Yeah.
Thank God that paid off, because we spent quite a bit of time fixing this up. So yeah, it's essentially more of a relaxed dining experience. We've got the rotisserie up here, very Mediterranean vibe. Friends come out, buy a bottle of wine, order some food, sit outside in the sun.
Or turn on some of your beer taps there that I hope you'll be plugged in at the other end come summer.
Of course, cannot wait for that.
Oh, I can't wait for it either. Fingers crossed. Okay, on to the vegetable garden.
True.
Oh, Ben, what? This is beautiful.
Yeah.
It's like being in a kind of Italian, like, private sort of vegetable garden. There's sort of kale and the mandarins, I think, and artichokes over there. There's such an Italian feel to it, an old world feel to it. But I know it's curated because Stones is a relatively newcomer to the Yarra Valley.
Yeah, of course.
Tell us the story of.
So we're 14 years old, Yarra Valley. No one in the family had any hospitality experience whatsoever. It was a bit of we joke about it being a bit of a midlife crisis.
Yes, well, I was going to say, what act of madness to opening a...
Dad was either going to buy a Ferrari or buy a barn, and he bought a barn.
Toss up there.
Yeah, we just had to go gun-ho into it. So every family member's just worked 7 days a week.
Really?
Yeah, since the induction of it, and now we're here and still working 7 days a week.
What's your role?
I do all the marketing, and I'd like to argue I'm Dad's right-hand man.
Yeah.
If you need someone to kick, I'm the one who kicks.
I'm sure you wouldn't argue too much. But the feel of it, the flavour of it, the curation of the whole place, because there are several different sort of there are several different sort of brands under the one umbrella, aren't there?
Yeah. So we started with Stones of the Yarra Valley, which is our wedding venue and events venue, and we then moved on to the Stables at Stones, which was a heritage listed building that was on the edge of falling down. Yeah. Quickly stood in there and fixed that up, turned it into what we think is a pretty special restaurant, and then
sadly empty at the moment.
Sadly empty. And then Meletos came about quite organically. The space was here. The Napoleons wanted us to do something. They wanted to open a brewery, and it sort of just developed in such a way that we thought, well, why not? And we decided to build what's behind us here. It's a 23-room hotel.
And it went up really quickly, didn't it?
It did. It was a pretty.
It was like how they build an office block in China.
Yeah. It was a pretty wild year, actually. We built this, we built that. Just everything had to go up because my parents sort of don't do things in halves. They just said, let's go, we're doing it, let's do it properly. And here we are.
And whose eye keeps the kind of, I was going to say before, the curation, the flavour of it, that beautiful kind of mixture of Yarra Valley and Italy and a bit of France I've seen in it as well. Who's overseeing that?
That's my mum, Vonnie
Your
Fraser.
mum, Vonnie.
So
I
she's
thought
the creative director across the entire board.
That's on her card.
That's on her card. And she's been lucky enough to step back a little bit from her roles when we first started. She was doing absolutely everything and raising 3 kids. She's now essentially in charge of all the creatives. She works often in the garden. That's her main passion. But yeah, she's definitely responsible.
And speaking
for
of garden, I believe you've been
yeah.
one of the few people who have put on a full-time gardener in all this.
We have, yes. We've
Good on
actually
you.
just recently hired a guy called Ash, who we think Mum might run away with. She's very much in love with him, and he's sort of responsible.
Whatever makes her happy.
Yeah, it's been a tough year.
Well, you know, this is lovely, but I'm getting a sense that I can smell that bread about to come out of the oven, so maybe we head back there.
Sure. Go ahead.
Back where we started with Andy at the Stones Kitchen, and the fruits of his love and labour are here, evident in this wonderful oven before us.
Yes.
Well,
So, let's pop her open.
let's pop her open. Well,
Yep.
oh, look at that! Just like I bought one. And that's what you were working on before.
Yes.
Oh, look at that! Don't they look fine?
So, in colour, what you're looking for is a nice deep brown with little dark accents. So that's all the caramelisation.
Is this hard to reproduce at home?
No.
Okay.
No, it's actually quite easy. So all the steps that you've seen today are very basic. It's all about practice. So like I said, there's no real right way of doing something. Learn your oven, learn yourself, know what feels good for you, and then eventually it'll turn out like that.
Okay. Beautiful. Well, congratulations. Thank you for showing how things work here at Stones. With the wonderful sourdough bread. We've had a beautiful tour. Now we can have some bread. Well, let's just wait for a bit. It's probably a bit hot to
A
handle.
bit hot to handle, give it about 15 minutes, but then yeah, we can tuck in.
All right. Good on you, Andy. Thanks. Perfect. So, Andy, when the kitchen's going full tilt, and I know it isn't now, needless to say, how many loaves of bread would you make in a session or a day or a morning?
In a day, we can make up to 70, 90 loaves at the peak of our processing power. So that's with 2 bakers.
Okay. Where does it go?
So it's sold all over the property. We actually do have this bread for our weddings as well.
Mm-hmm.
So weddings are at the barn here. Stables is our fine dining section of our experience at Stones.
And then over at Hillsville?
Over at Hillsville at number 7,
Yep.
right next to 4 Pillars. And then it's also sold at the Providore to the public and as our bread at Meletos for general dining.
I'm going to have another. I'm going to have a go at the.
Go ahead.
Yeah. What would it say?
So
Don't push down.
no pressure on the bread.
No pressure.
Let
No
the
pressure.
blade do the work.
Okay.
A nice story motion.
Look at that. I think your knife's blunt, mate.
Practice makes perfect.
Sure it does. There you go. That slice is mine. And no one is getting a taste of it. Thank you. And this is it. I cannot tell you how good this loaf of Andy's still warm sourdough smells. My goodness, I do hope your sourdough baking skills have been uplifted somewhat by our friend Andy the Baker's wisdom and experience and knowledge. And if not, don't worry, because I tell you what, all things being equal, eventually, soon, hopefully you'll be able to come out here to Stones of the Yarra Valley and enjoy the bread, enjoy the wine, look at those vineyards, enjoy the food and enjoy that magnificent view of the valley behind us there. Do continue to enjoy the Yarra Valley Garden Party, and if you still want to support the region, remember it's click for Vic and then find your way to the Yarra Valley's very own regionalpantry.com.au. See you soon. I really am going to enjoy this.